Welcome to the Dealing with Divorce podcast, where we bring together professionals in the legal community from across Georgia to help you deal with divorce before, during, and after. Today I've got some folks from the Center for Navigating Family Change out of Gwinnett County. I've got Dan, Janae, and Sherri. Please, y'all tell about your stuff. Start with Sherri.
Hi, I'm a licensed clinical social worker by profession. I've been in practice for more than 30 years. I work as a parenting coordinator. I'm the clinical director for the Center for Navigating Family Change, and I frequently liaison with attorneys, guardian ad litems, consult with some of the judges. I work with the co-parents. It's all about trying to match co-parents with the services that they need.
Mm-hmm. And how about you?
And I'm Janae Combs. I'm the executive director for Center for Navigating Family Change. I have started out doing parent coordination work with the center for about 9 years now, and we help parents so that they can learn how to communicate better for the sake of their children, not getting caught up in the middle of their conflict. That is what we do. I also have a private practice where I do see a lot of couples before divorce out in the community, and I've been doing that work for about 20 years. That is me.
I'm Dan Feldman. Before I became a licensed professional counselor, I found out I was getting divorced. And I went through the classes that you have to take and was going to be a divorced father of two. And I think that's a unique thing that everybody in our organization has been affected personally in some way or another by divorce. I became a licensed professional counselor after that. One of the main parts of my practice is working with folks who have gone through, are going through divorce, whether they're the adults or the kids. And I'm the educational director for the Center for Navigating Family Change. It's a privilege to work with these ladies.
And so tell us about the Center for Navigating Family Change. Where do you serve, and what kind of services do you offer?
And at the Center for Navigating Family Change, we've been in Gwinnett County is where we started over 20 years ago. We now service people all over the state of Georgia, primarily Fulton County, Gwinnett County, and DeKalb County is where we started back before COVID. We used to do these classes in person, and so we couldn't go all around Georgia then. But now, due to the less restrictions we have with COVID and now being fully 100% online with our services, we are able to offer these services throughout the state of Georgia. If you are divorcing and or looking, going through a legitimization process, or you are having guardianship of a child in some kind of way, and they are under the age of 18 in the state of Georgia, people take a co-parenting class. It does not have to be through our organization, but that is going to be the clientele that we serve. And we host these classes weekly, and we also offer parent coordination services and resist refuse services, also known as reunification services for families who have parent-child contact problems. We don't just only do the classes, we offer ongoing support to people that find themselves in high conflict situations, mostly. And we do that anywhere from a couple months, and we'll stay with you for years if you need us. And a lot of people find that to be very helpful as they navigate through this difficult time in their life.
If I can add
go
two
ahead.
things to that. One, we actually serve people not just in Georgia, but because everything is virtual, we can work with co-parents through our classes all across the country. It doesn't matter where they are, they can be in another country and we can work with them. We also offer our co-parenting seminars in Spanish, which is fantastic. I don't know that there's another organization that does that. And we offer an advanced co-parenting seminar for folks who are really in high conflict. That is a small group. We cap our attendance at 10. So folks get very personal, almost one-on-one type of coaching and instruction and education to help them in those situations.
And are some of these classes that y'all are talking about, are these kind of optional classes like driver's ed, or are they things that are required in divorce?
In the state of Georgia, if you have a child under the age of 18, it's mandatory that you go through when you're separating, divorcing, legitimizing a child, or getting guardianship, that you go through some type of 4-hour co-parenting class. The advanced classes often come from people taking our first class, realizing they need a little bit more. Guardian ad litem sometimes refer people to us to those classes, but a lot are self-referred, and people find that they just need a little bit more coaching, and they get that through our advanced class, and that's held as a kind of like a group setting. But I've had many personal clients that I see in my practice that just want the education. Anybody can come to the class. It is just mandated through the courts that people do that work, but anybody can attend.
And are any of you attorneys? Do you give legal advice?
No.
Not at all.
Okay. And so I took some notes from your seminar workbook that you have online. It's an excellent resource. I highly recommend. I'd like to go through some of those things. So what are some things that really a lot of times are very common types of conflicts that you see coming up?
The parenting plan is always going to be a situation where each of the co-parents will have their own interpretation of what something means. So we can have conflict over how many times one parent gets to call their child while the child's at the other family's house, who can take the child to the doctor's appointment, what's the start time of visitation or parenting time, what's the end time, what happens over holidays, how many extracurriculars can a child be signed up for, and what location does it need to happen in. The bottom line, from my perspective, and I think each of you can kind of add to this, is any point that you can have on the parenting plan is a source for conflict, and people just not agreeing on how to adhere to that.
What's something people can do in drafting their parenting plan that can make it easier to avoid those conflicts?
Be very, very specific and detailed. A lot of plans are very vague, and so they're open to a lot of interpretation. The more specific and detailed you become, the less interpretation is possible. So the purpose of the parenting plan in the court order is to keep the parents out of conflict. And if you think of it that way, you want to write it in such a way that it's so clear, so specific, that there's nothing to argue about. Now, no parenting plan can predict every possible scenario that could come up between co-parents, but a lot of the ones that we're talking about here, parenting time, holidays, vacations, extracurriculars, these kinds of things can be very well specified.
And the word co-parenting is coming up a lot. For the people who have never gone through a divorce, is their first time, what is co-parenting and how is that different from, I've also heard you talk about parallel parenting.
So co-parenting simply means that there are two people who are parenting together. You're a co-parent, I'm a co-parent. And when you're married, you're co-parenting as a married couple. When you are divorcing or separating, you're still co-parents, but you're just in separate households typically. The difference is that a lot of people say that they want to co-parent better. Well, co-parenting is what you're doing. How you co-parent is a different question. There is what we call cooperative co-parenting, where the two parents can get along and make decisions together, and they can be more friendly and they can negotiate among themselves a little bit easier. Then there is parallel co-parenting, where there is a larger distinction between how each parent co-parents their children. So you can co-parent one way in your household, and I can co-parent another, or I can parent, my way in the other household. The difference is when you are parallel co-parenting, the only place that you really have to communicate is around the 4 different areas in the parenting plan that require you, to communicate, such as negotiating, summer vacations, talking about medical appointments, talking about educational situations. So where you cross is just those areas of specific things that are addressed in the parenting plan. Other than that, you're parenting separately. So that's really the distinction. What would you add to that?
Yeah, we're really drawing a distinction between cooperative and parallel. And cooperative is high communication, high flexibility. There's a lot of trust, goodwill between the parents. I don't think you're out to get me. You don't think I'm out to get you. We're willing to make adjustments to what the parenting plan says in order to accommodate everybody's needs. Parallel parenting, we don't get along very well, and we end up in conflict when we try to be flexible. So those folks stick to the parenting plan, and we don't try to be flexible. We just follow the plan. Now, like Sherri says, if there's an issue that comes up like, okay, which orthodontist are we going to use? We might have to confer about that and work through that, because obviously the parenting plan doesn't say it's going to be Dr. whoever. But for the most part, just like Sherri said, in parallel, it's separate. We're separate independent individuals. We don't get together and have meetings and talk all the time and all of that.
So I don't think I would be stretching to say it's probably better for the kids for co-parenting over parallel parenting because the conflict is less in those types of situations. How? No?
It's all co-parenting.
Okay.
It's all co-parenting.
Okay.
So a lot of people think in the
Well,
popular
cooperative.
the popular
that's the key word.
misconception is that cooperative is the only way or the best way that your kids are going to come through this psychologically, emotionally, socially. But what we find is that parallel is absolutely as good. The research bears it out in those key internal ways, psychologically, emotionally, socially. What really matters is the amount of conflict that the child or children are exposed to, the amount of parental conflict. We know people who have stayed together for the sake of the kids, right? Mm-hmm. But it's a high conflict situation, and those kids don't do very well because those homes tend to be high conflict.
So it sounds like just because parents are parallel parenting, the kids don't necessarily have to know that it's high conflict, and that's why they're parallel parenting, because they're not they're doing their best to not expose the children to that. Ideally,
Children are protected from the conflict.
The parallel parenting keeps them out of conflict.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right? Because this is a couple or co-parents who can't cooperatively do it because they get into conflict, so they go parallel.
Mm-hmm. And there's a misconception that not only that cooperative co-parenting is best when it really isn't, but there's the misconception that that's what everybody else is doing. Mm-hmm. And the statistics are that maybe about 25 to 30% of the population can actually successfully cooperatively co-parent. Mm-hmm. The vast majority of folks cannot do that.
That's why they split up.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
And I was about to say that.
Exactly.
They would not, if they could stay together and do this well, they wouldn't be divorcing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where it becomes, that's the way we tend to try to have our families look at and see that works best for them, because they're no longer in that love relationship that they used to be in, where they had to talk every day and they had to check in and they did all these things. But we're teaching them how to have healthy boundaries and being able to know that over here, this doesn't work anymore. So we're not having all of that talk anymore, but less is more. And what our kids get to see is that they don't have to be stuck in the middle of these two conflictual parents, because they're not really talking all that much, and they're only talking about what matters, which is the kid.
And I know that you mentioned that like some of your services are maybe mandatory. What if, after the divorce, after they've taken the required classes, a parent has a growth mindset, they recognize that they need some additional skills to learn how to communicate and avoid conflict better. Where can they go to for support?
I think that there's quite a few options. I know through our organization, individual parents can contact us, and we do have some voluntary services where we have parent of divorce training. We have folks within our staff who will do consulting and coaching. There's a variety of different people out in the community who can provide services. The real key is connecting with someone who is familiar with working with high conflict co-parents and high conflict co-parenting situations. People who understand resist, refuse dynamics, people who understand this type of work, because it's not regular family therapy, it's not regular type of counseling. And a person who doesn't have that specialized training can give some very damaging information and can coach in a very damaging way and make matters worse.
And so go into that refuse, resist dynamics. What is that? I've heard that before.
Refuse, resist dynamics is a phrase that is often used when you're looking at a situation where there's been some type of break in a relationship between a parent and a child, where a child may not want to go see another parent. Oftentimes, unfortunately, what we hear a lot of parents say is that, oh, my child is being alienated from me, which is not really an accurate way of looking at the dynamic, because it's a family system and it's more appropriate to look at it from that perspective and understand that there's a lot of different factors that contribute to resistance or refusal from a child to have interactions with a co-parent. And understanding that it's not just alienation, because alienation is a behavior where there's an active campaign by one parent against the other, where they're trying to, I'm going to say, not necessarily
Poison?
coerce,
But
but to influence a child against the other co-parent. But there's other reasons why it can happen. There can be situations that are connected to the child's personality. Perhaps they have anxiety, perhaps they have some other kind of social, emotional, or developmental difficulty that makes it where transitions are difficult or social interactions are difficult, and that they try to resist because it keeps them more stable.
And self-protection.
It's self-protection. Sometimes one of the parents may have psychiatric issues, mental health issues, substance abuse issues, different other kinds of personality traits that make them less desirable. That if I have a parent over here who has anger issues and is always yelling at me, well, I may not want to go over there. Or if I have a parent over here who has substance abuse issues, and when I'm there, they're drinking heavy, or they're doing something that makes it where they're not pleasant to be around, I may not want to go over there. That could feel dangerous to me. Sometimes it can just be that I have an affinity towards the other parent. You know, we both like science, we both like sports, we both like music, and so I prefer to stay over here. And there's developmental considerations, that if you're looking at a 16-year-old, perhaps, who has a social life when they're living with one parent, going to another parent that's in another community interferes with their social life. They may not want to have those transitions, they may not want to do it. So when we're looking at resist, refuse dynamics, we have to look at the whole system of everything that's going on to really have an understanding of what's going on and what kind of interventions might be appropriate to deal with that.
Mm-hmm. What kind of behaviors, those sorts of things a parent should hopefully not have to expect? What kind of behaviors should a parent expect from their children as they're going through this process of divorce and this post-separation life and change? What as far as like grief or behavior, what should parents expect from their children?
I know kids will shut down and not go within, talk to their friends versus talk to you. And I always say, your job as a parent is to keep that relationship as open as possible. Hopefully they are coming to you, but it's not going to be odd if they choose to retreat. They usually don't want to cause more conflict if you are in conflict. And a part of them taking care of you is to also kind of fall underneath the radar and not be around. So those are the kids we're going to pay attention to and try to get them to a place of feeling more comfortable with us. Not forcing ever, but I usually say, as a parent, we do a lot of talking, and sometimes we need to do a lot of listening to our children to really find out what it is that they need or want. Because they will tell us if we've done a good job of building a relationship where they feel comfortable enough to do that. I also know, depending on their age and stage in life, those older kids that really know that y'all might not need to be together way before you did, sometimes feel like this is an inconvenience to their life. They might be actually angry about the fact that you're doing this right now before I was about to graduate in May. And now all the attention and focus is over on you two and not what's going on in my life. So we see a lot of, anger might be one of them. Anger is also one of those grief tenets that they might be tapping into at that time. Younger kids, might fantasize and want parents to be together again and ask, can we please have the birthday party with everybody coming? I'm not going to always say it's behaviors. It's just sometimes the different ways that kids deal with transition and loss of routine, and my world is just turning upside down, and we live in a world that's chaotic already, and home was that place that was comfortable. But now all of a sudden I don't know what to expect here. Or people are still living in the house together, dad is coming in the kitchen not talking to mom, and what do I do here? I know that a lot of the healing comes through listening, and we just have to make it as parents be a space and a place for kids to be able to do that. But you're going to know the comfort level of your kid by just watching how they interact or react to what's going on. So it's really good to be in tune with kids. And they don't all need counseling. I will say this, lots of us get lots of knocks on the door immediately when this starts for counseling. But you got to know your kid and check in with them for what it is that they need, because they will tell you. And if they do need to talk to somebody other than you, have some other trusted adults in your life, or reach out to counselors to get them that.
It can be really useful to think about that question also in terms of the children are going to be seeking to make sure that their needs are met. So what is it that they need, and is it getting met? And that's what a lot of them, maybe below the level of consciousness, are actually doing, right? They're seeing how and where they're going to get their needs met. Now, the extreme of that is, okay, how do I take advantage of this situation for my benefit?
And as they're trying to navigate that, especially with older children, they're going to have a lot of questions. How is a parent to deal with those hard questions that especially older children are going to make, and or accusations that they might hear elsewhere, and parents might have a natural human inclination to be defensive and kind of awaken some of these conflicts. How does a parent talk to their kids about this transition?
I think that's a challenging one because when you're responding to children, it's really, I always use the reference of like in the movie The Blind Side, where they talk about that the mother was an onion and you have to peel back the layers of the onion. I think that really that practice is what we have to do with children in these kinds of situations as well, because children will ask a variety of different questions, whether they're younger children or adolescents. And it's important to understand what's underneath the question that they're asking and dig a little bit deeper to try to understand what's driving the question. What are they really trying to understand about a situation, and respond to that. The children, I guess it becomes difficult for parents because the truth is not always what it's cracked up to be for the children. And so as parents, we may want to tell them the truth about their other co-parent as we see it, or correct them, or throw their other parent under the bus simply because we're angry. But it becomes important to not do that for the child's sake, but instead, control our reactivity and think from a responsive standpoint about what is my child really asking and needing, and how can I help them navigate this difficult time. And if from a parent's perspective, if you can dig a little bit deeper and respond to the emotional piece of where they're coming from, if they're scared, if they're nervous, if they don't know what's happening, they ask the questions, and you have to dig around to find out what is that they really need, and answer and supply that information instead. So if they say, oh, did mommy cheat? Okay, well, you don't answer, well, yeah, she sure did. You know, you say, well, can you tell me a little bit more about, you know, why you're asking me that question? You know,
Very
what's-
Socratic.
Yes, you know,
Yeah.
is there, you know, what's going on with that? You know, what makes you ask me that question right now? And then you dig a little bit deeper and then you can respond. But you typically aren't gonna want to respond to those kinds of questions just at face value.
Absolutely. And I
Yeah.
think remembering developmentally appropriate.
Yes.
You gotta know your kid and know, you know, where your kid is and their ability to receive certain answers. I usually say, you know, yeah, knowing, digging up where's that question coming from, because it's not always about the answer to the question. It's about, you know, what are you thinking about that gets you to that being your question, and how will that help you? You know, is this information something that they really need right now? I think, again, slowing down enough to really listen to our kids helps us and our response. And knowing, too, as parents, you don't always have to have the answer right away. And some answers you won't have, and that's okay. But letting them know, especially if you have to think about it, that I'll get back to you. You're not in court being cross-examined by your kid. And I think sometimes with court being so involved in all this, parents get defensive and think that they need to, you know, defend what's going on. But that's not really what your kid is doing. You've got to really strengthen that relationship with them to find out the why they're asking that.
I feel like this is an important topic. Go ahead, Dan. Tell us your-
We try to keep kids out of the middle because a lot of those questions, perhaps from the other parent or somebody else, has put the child in the middle. We pay these judges great salaries. They have tremendous training and experience, and they have a hard time sorting out whose story is right, mom's or dad's. Why would we expect a child to be able to do that? So one of the things that we teach in the class is that a parent can usually respond with something like, you know, I'm really sorry that you had to hear that. But you know me and you have direct experience with me. So judge me by your experience with me and what you know directly about me, not what anybody else says. And by the way, that's how you probably should evaluate anybody and everybody in your
Yeah,
life.
turn it into a lifelong lesson.
There you go.
Well, what about on the flip side? That child who doesn't ask questions, who in response to all this kind of shuts down, gets quiet. Perhaps they're a bookworm. Is there any kind of a resource that a parent could maybe give? If you had unlimited funding, is there a book on age levels that you would really recommend that children read in those types of situations?
I don't have a book to recommend for children to read.
Okay, what about parents?
The biggest thing, I think, is for the parent to be present with the child. Well, and one of the things, you know, you can ask a question just to introduce a topic so that the child then knows, okay, this is a topic I can talk about. So for example, you might say to your middle schooler, you know, I bet it's really tough on you having to go back and forth between the two houses. And they may be uncomfortable talking about it at first, like, oh, this is a dangerous topic. And they may say, no, it's fine. And then, you know, 3 weeks later when it was really tough, man, they bring it up because you introduced it, it's okay to talk about
planted
it.
the seed.
And now they can talk about it. And you want to be there for them. You want to listen non-judgmentally. You want them to allow them to have their feelings, their thoughts. Be there for them and try to, like we were talking about before, try to find out what is it they really need. Meet that need if you can, because you want to be the person that they come to with stuff. And so it's less about a book, it's more about showing up, being there, giving them what they really need, which is you.
So we talked a lot about how we should talk to the children in divorce. Let's flip the other side. What are some damaging things that red line? You should not do these behaviors in this process.
The quick answer is don't ever talk negatively about your other co-parent in any way. You know, that in and of itself is probably, I think, the number one thing that should not happen. Because even if the child comes to you and they're talking about them, let them talk about their other co-parent.
But
Even
don't
if they're
chime in.
even if they're venting about the other co-parent, don't say, "Yeah, you're right." Just say, "I hate that's like using Dan's words. I hate that you had to experience that." You don't want to ever focus on what's going on with the other co-parent, whether it's necessarily good or bad, but rather you would focus on the experience of your child. So you're not ever going to talk about the other co-parent, but you're going to talk about the child's experience. And so that's where you connect, is on that front. So it's an emotional connection with the child. Not saying anything about anything legal, the legal proceedings.
Absolutely.
They don't need to know the adult business. They don't need to know anything about what happened in the divorce or the separation. They don't need to know about the adult conflicts. They don't need to know about ongoing conflicts during litigation or post-litigation. The adults should have their conversations and make their decisions first, and then let the child know what's going on. So if you're planning vacation time or if you're planning activities, those conversations are adult conversations that happen first. And so you don't talk to the child about it before you talk to the other
Other
co-parent.
parent.
You don't make plans with the child before you get everything cleared and okayed with the other co-parent and those things negotiated. Anything that puts the child in the middle
Right.
is what you
Or
avoid.
unnecessary disappointment.
Yeah.
And I would say, when keeping kids out of conflict, one of the things in today's world is social media. And I would just urge everybody to not post things about what's going on in the divorcing process, the other parent, the other family on social media, because a lot of those things get back to kids too. And their cheerleading squad, the other mothers know about what's going on because of what just got put out there. But to really think before you are even typing things into your phone. I usually say this in the class we teach, that people save their other co-parents under different names. And some of those names, as soon as you see at the basketball game, your other child is out there performing in the game, and you get a text from that other co-parent, and you have them saved in your phone a certain way, and your other kids are looking over your shoulder. That gets them in conflict. So we're not just talking about like conflict in the parking lot when we're doing the exchange and we're yelling at each other. It's also subtle conflict that kids they're very observant. I know I have a 9-year-old that is always over my back, and there's nothing that is going to get away from him without him seeing. And so sometimes you take for granted, that we have these freedoms today to say what we need to say, but we also have little ears and eyes always looking and watching. And sometimes you don't even know, they may not even discuss with you what they just read in your text message, but really making sure that we limit, we don't say disparaging things about each other, because that's the other half of that child who loves that person and sees themselves in that person that you just went and talked about. So they're now in inner conflict with themselves because they come from both of you. And I don't think people always think about that.
And I think that's a very important topic. Judge Davis really talks in about that a lot in a lot of the cases I've been with him. Well, what about the parents who their problem is not necessarily the kids hearing bad things, but it's a little more insidious. It's kind of the communications privately between the parents are just very toxic. How can a parent kind of neutralize those toxic behaviors when they're confronted with that by the other parent?
You want to do that one, Dan?
Well, there are several ways we can go with that. Gray rocking, you want to talk about the email protocol, or what do we want to do here?
I think both a little.
Okay.
Yeah.
So one thing is a great technique called gray rocking, and the basic idea behind gray rocking is that you make yourself as interesting to that other person as a little gray rock on the side of the road that you would drive past, right? You don't want to feed into the conflict. So you begin giving very minimal answers. You only address what has to be addressed for parenting. All of the other stuff that accuses you or says bad things about you or anything like that, you just let those go. We talk a lot about using a response. Thank you, I'll take that into consideration, right? And then doing what works for you in your home for your parenting. So that way they can get out whatever their complaint is. Thank you, I'll take that into consideration, and then you do what works in your home. We developed at CNFC an email protocol for parents to use that really cleans up the communication. It's a structured protocol, and it takes a little time to explain, but I'll do a really miniature version of it. We're no longer in an emotionally intimate relationship with this other person. It's now a business relationship, and the business is raising these kids. And so we have, just like any business, we have business meetings, but we don't do it in person. We do it over email. So Sunday night, one parent sends an email to the other between 5 and 9 p.m. The parent who receives it sends a reply on Monday night between 5 and 9 p.m. Now, if that email has any questions for the first parent, there will be a one email on Tuesday night between 5 and 9 that answers those questions. But that's all of the communication. And it's not, dear John, hope you're doing, no, it's none of that. It's FYI, and we give information that the other parent may need. And what we call RR, which is requested or required responses. These are questions, we need information from you. And then, of course, answers to those. And with this, we don't communicate in other ways. We don't do texting or phone calls or in-person meetings unless they've been requested and approved by both parents. And except for like emergencies or, or courtesy kinds of things. All of the meat and potatoes, so to speak, of the discussion about co-parenting takes place in that one weekly email exchange. And it's over by Tuesday night at 9 p.m. at the latest. It doesn't start again until Sunday night. So that's 5 days where we don't communicate. We parent separately. And so the conflict comes down. We also work within that framework. For example, when we're doing parent coordination, we put all parent coordination high conflict cases on this email protocol, and then we coach them on how to take the emotional charge out of the statements, just give the information, just ask for the information you need so that conflict drops. So that's kind of two ways.
Yeah, the key, I think, in all of that is helping co-parents understand that it takes two people to be in conflict, and if one person can withdraw and have a healthier co-parenting boundary, then automatically that's going to reduce the temperature in their relationship. And so learning how to get out of the reactive type of situation.
Kind of slow down.
Slow down and be responsive, thoughtful, deliberate, purposeful. And that can make a huge difference.
Sounds like that slowing down kind of might help with, especially with written communications where tone doesn't necessarily come off, can help you drop those assumptions. How can assumptions kind of lead to the conflict?
We have a diagram in our book that says assumptions lead to allegations that lead to litigation. I think that's the flow. We all know what assumptions, that stands for. I'm not going to say it out loud here. But assumptions get you in trouble. You can't ever assume. Sometimes you should ask more questions if you're making an assumption. Say, I doubt that this is true. However, just wanted you to know, so that you're not assuming that they're doing something or assuming ill will or bad intention when certain things happen. So you can ask a few more questions, or you can. Sometimes it becomes important to give the other co-parent the benefit of the doubt, and assume that maybe some wires got crossed or something happened, and it wasn't an intended, difficult situation. And when you can have a little bit of grace towards your other co-parent, then that can help you be less reactive.
And addressing it like that is not accusatory, but it invites, us coming to a solution here versus a fight. And what we know, we try to keep people out of the courtroom, and all of our services are geared around keeping people from going back to court. And a lot of that is really wrapped up in the way that you communicate. And lots of people can avoid spending lots of money if you can learn how to communicate more effectively. And without the backdrop of a love relationship. And once we see, when people start truly doing that business type setup, it really lessens the temperature for everybody. Because then you're not concerned on certain things. You are just keeping it factual. And kids can go be kids when you do that.
There's a dilemma that happens when you've got co-parenting situations. And it's where if you've got parents who look at a situation differently, and this is a boundary dilemma, where one parent may want to be cooperative and one parent may not want to be that way. So that difference in expectations in and of itself creates a conflict, and you've got this dilemma. Where, let me give you an example. If you've got a situation where one parent is wanting to have a schedule change and say, I've got something going on this next weekend, can I pick up little Johnny on Saturday instead of Friday? Or can I have him some extra time on this day because something special is happening? Can we swap around? Okay. So you've got some choices at that point where you can be cooperative and you can make some of those adjustments, or you can be parallel and you can stick to the parenting plan. The dilemma that can happen is that if you are too cooperative sometimes in high conflict situations, it can become a situation where it adds more conflict. And what I mean by that is, say you're agreeable to this time. Well, next week rolls around. Well, this is going on. Can we switch again? Then the next week comes around. Oh, this is going on. Can we switch again? Can I do this? Can I do that? And so you get this perpetual situation where if you are cooperative, you feel taken advantage of. You feel manipulated. And that's difficult. And then all of a sudden, if you start setting some boundaries and say, well, no, I can't do it this time. Now all of a sudden you're being accused of being a bad co-parent because you're not doing what I want you to. And so it's a situation where if you're cooperative, then you're taken advantage of. If you try to set that boundary, you're accused of being a co-parent, a bad co-parent. Okay? So that's the dilemma. What do you do? The solution is actually very simple. The solution is you follow your parenting plan. And if you do that, you let your parenting plan set the boundary. It's not you. It's like, the parenting plan says this, so we really just need to stick to it.
Is there any kind of copy and paste language you could equip parents with to say, this is how you respond without creating conflict, and politely say no?
There is a resource. Our former executive director, Diane Dirks, and one of our current parent coordinators have a wonderful podcast called CP Dilemmas.
Yes.
And they're a wonderful
She was actually one of the
resource.
inspirations for me making this podcast.
Okay.
That's an
She-
excellent resource.
So they're fabulous. And I think they've probably got 300 something different episodes in the can
Yeah.
for their podcast.
They're great.
And you can search their
Listen to them in the
menu,
car.
And they have, a list of 50 mantras that you can use. I think Dan gave one of them was, thank you for asking, but let's stick to the parenting plan. Thank you for letting me know. I'll take that into consideration. Just some real quick one-liners that, I would call conversation stoppers.
Yes.
And when you can use those regularly, you'll find the ones that fit for you. And just, you become the broken record, at that point. And that's how you set that boundary.
How important are words of affirmation to children?
Extremely.
We teach
Okay,
children
yeah.
how to think about themselves. We do. All parents do. We teach children how to think about themselves. And so if you teach children that they can accomplish things, that they're valuable, that they're loved, they're accepted, that's what they're going to believe about themselves. If you tell children that they're a problem, that they're not okay, that they whatever, then that's what they're going to believe about themselves. And we all work with adults, right, in our practices, and we're unraveling that in 40, 50-year-olds, right, who don't believe they have any value, right. So those affirmations are huge.
I usually give the example of, you know, when you have a baby and they go to the, when they're wrapped up, like the burrito in the, not NICU, that's only if a baby is in problems, but, you know, when they're in the nursery area. And we look at all those babies that are born on that day. I usually ask my clients, which one of those babies have more value? And then they look at me like I'm crazy. And, you know, what do you mean? I said, you have to pick one that has the most value. They're all born on today, April the 14th. Which one of those babies? And you don't see any, you know, you can't go in there and talk to them. Just point out the one. And that is really a good segue into where they all have the same value. And we all are born with the same value. But parenting and the messages that we're given is the thing that lessens that value or increases it as you go along in life. So the only way you get to a place of feeling like you don't have value is because of what was given to you past April 14th, when you came in with the same value as everybody in that room. But we tend to knock that off in life as kids grow up by what we say. So I think affirmations is essential to helping kids feel valued. And like Dan said, you know, then we're not with the 56-year-old who still, you know, yesterday I was talking to somebody who had to go write down in the middle of our session, I am enough. And you have to write that down, you know, halfway through a century of life. I am enough. And I already know the story behind that has to be that's what was missing. That's what you didn't know.
Yeah.
So, you know, that worth is going to go through you with life. But as parents, if we remember that when we speak all the time, then we are not having our children. I usually say, you know, nothing's wrong with therapy. Please go sit in the seat. But I don't want it to be all about me. And the only way to avoid that is by instilling the things that help you feel valued and worthy.
And you may not know this, but in your ladies' room, there's a sign that says in one of the stalls, I am enough. We all need the affirmation.
Oh, no, I didn't know that.
Love it.
Yeah, Bree's smiling, she knows it.
Love it.
And so, yeah, with children, we're planting the seeds for the future. And the Center for Navigating Family Change is really doing a lot to improve the lives of children and really make the world a better place long term in the future as these children develop. And are y'all a government organization, or how are you structured?
We are a private, nonprofit, 501c3 organization. We are not government funded. Our monies usually come from people that are taking the classes, pay a nominal fee for our experience in the classes and the certificate that they get to get through the court system. And also we try to have our prices for our cost for our services and our parent coordination and reunification be very lower, much lower than what's out there in the Atlanta community. So that people can afford our services. We've reduced our, due to just responding to the economic constraints that people have nowadays, we've reduced our deposits to be able to better meet people's needs and be able to service people right away without, because as we know, divorces cost a lot of money. A lot of people come to us very strapped for money because of what they are putting out there already. And we just want people served. So please, if anybody out there is hearing us and wants to donate, you can also go to our website and we absolutely take donations as we try to service as many people as possible. And we do not like to turn people away. Sherri is our clinical director and does a very good job of trying to navigate ways for us to meet people's needs if at all possible, but we want them to be able to go through the entirety of our services and get what they need. And sometimes, a lot of times, money is what keeps people from getting what they need.
And that website is cnfc.org.
Thank you.
Just throw that in there.
And let's say there's a parent out there who really life was changed by your services, and they're a millionaire. They just donated $1 million to the organization. How would that help the public? What kind of growth plans or any ideas how would that change the organization? What would you do with that
Oh, that
donation?
would be fabulous.
Oh,
Janae?
oh boy. I know for sure when I just talked about Sherri looking at, the clients that are reaching out to us for help. We would first start with being able to provide some of that help to those parents and make it be a nominal fee because we actually
needs-based scholarship.
Needs-based scholarship so that they could, and we used to have those back in the day, and I will tell you that with the economic times of today, a lot of that has not been able to happen like it was originally designed. But we would absolutely bring that back and be able to service people that are asking for help. Because one statistic that I think is important to note here is that when kids grow up in homes that have minimal conflict to no conflict, they actually do not come into the system to need services from the system due to bad choices and mistakes and things that are made. It is directly tied how a child's outcome in the future looks to their conflict that they had in the home in which they grew up. And what we know is when it's minimized, those kids are better citizens, go out in the world, do better in the world. Not because it's not rocket science figured this out, but you're able to be a kid versus going to class every day and having a lot of stress and anxiety and all these other things due to not knowing what home is going to be like when you get home. So there is a direct correlation between doing this work and doing it well and your parents getting the help that they need so that you can go be a kid and the outcome and future for that kid.
And so what resources can parents who are turning off this podcast right now, outside of Center for Navigating Family Change, where can they go? What influencers, do y'all listen to, or what people, inspired you? What other resources could parents go and look for?
I would say check out the podcast from Diane
Yes.
and Rick, CP Dilemmas. I'll reiterate that one. I think that the CNFC website, we have a resource page that has dozens of books and other resources that you can access, very easily. And there's an organization called the Association for Family and Conciliation Courts. They have a website, and there's any number of different trainings and seminars that people can access through that organization. Parents can access it, legal professionals can access it, therapists can access that information. And all of that information is very timely, research based, and is going to be practical information that parents can use.
And I will say for emotional and faith support, Diane also, after her retirement, she just cannot stop doing this work in many ways. She has a daily devotional that comes to my email every day called Daily Devotional for Frustrated Co-Parents. That you can go look out there, and she always, and every single day, 7 days a week, there is something dropped that is just probably very tied to what you're going through. And it's just sometimes that you say affirmations, that little extra word that can help you get through your day and know that it's going to be okay at the end of the day.
Wow. Y'all have been wonderful. Maybe one day I will. I'll get popular enough that I can get Diane on this podcast.
She loves.
maybe.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I say. She loves to chat with people about this. It's a passion, and I will speak for myself. It was her passion that really got me into this kind of business. Like
I was about to
Janae,
say, that's how we're all
eight
here.
or
Yeah.
9 years
Yeah.
ago.
Every
Yeah.
one of us, yeah.
It's shared experience around divorce and separation and the difficulties there. And the passion of wanting to make a difference and make things better. Because I think we've all learned that if we are able to help parents help children, then the whole system of our community improves.
It multiplies the impact.
And so that's where it starts. I know in my professional practice, I started out working primarily with children, and then I started working with families, and then I started working with couples, because the more I did this kind of work, the more I understood. It starts with that parent dyad. And when you can get that into a healthier place, whether the parents are married or not, it doesn't matter. If you can have that dyad healthier, you've helped the whole system.
Absolutely. From the top down, it starts at the top.
Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom today, y'all. And I think I'm going to call it a wrap. This has been the Dealing with Divorce podcast. See you next time.